So make sure you go through all these resources here, pointers, arrays, and then this data structure. Understand the arrays, the pointers, the strings, and also the memory layout, how these things are stored. I've already explained them, but make sure you go through the materials to understand them more. So now let's begin the tasks here. So before we begin with the task here, let me create my repository. So let me copy this here. So I will just say mkdir, right? Paste here. Alright, so I will cd into it. Alright, then the directory here. Don't forget to create your readme. So when you create this repository, I'm sure we've been using it in the previous task, so there's no need for a readme for this low-level programming, as far as you've done it before, so no need. So let me create this again, this directory here. Alright, so I will cd into it. Alright, so now also create your readme. Let me just create it. Echo, let me just say practice readme. Alright, so readme.md. So you can see here I'm working on Vagrant. Okay, I'm not working on my SSH. I've not logged in using SSH or the sandbox. As you can see here, it's showing what Vagrant. I'm using Vagrant because it's kind of faster to explain these things to you, because when I logged in using the SSH, at times I get logged out. Okay, I get logged out. So let's begin with the task here. So it says write a function that takes a pointer to an integer as parameter and update the value it points to 98. When they say pointer to an integer, what do they mean? Let me just show you this. I've already explained this here. When I say something like this, when you are told pointer to an integer, it just simply means int, then let's say the pointer name is ptr. So this is just pointer to an integer. This pointer is what? Pointing to an integer. That's just what this is saying. And then the value the pointer should point to supposed to hold an integer value. That's just what this is saying. When they said pointer to an integer, just know that the variable pointer is declared using an int. The data type is an integer. So they said that the function takes a pointer to an integer as parameter and update the value it points to 98. I've explained how we can access the value of a pointer, right? I've given an example. I said if n takes the value 10 here, and this pointer here is storing what? The address, sorry. This pointer is storing the address of n. So I can simply access the value of this n by dereferencing the pointer here. I can just say asterisk ptr, right? Then I will say it's equals to 20. So now you can see I've changed the address, sorry, the value of this variable n from 10 to 20. So when you use printf, it's going to give you 20 as the new value of n, not 10. Okay, so this is what the dereferencing is all about. So that's what we are going to do here. So don't forget, when you are to create a function, we have to create our main file, right? So I will have to create main.h file, right? Our header file. So what is the syntax? Hash, sorry. Yes, so hash if not defined, right? Then main underscore h, right? That's the file name. Then hash define, right? Then main underscore h, right? Then what? Then end if. So this is the syntax, right? So the first thing is to copy this. We have to copy this. Where is the function? Oh, before this, we have to include the prototype for what? For our putka. Just like the way we normally do. If the case arises for us to use putka, then there is no need for us to include it again. So this is the putka here. This is the function putka, right? So let me just copy this. This is the function prototype. I will just copy this and paste this here, and then put a semicolon. So now I have a what? A function prototype for putka. So whenever I'm trying to use this putka, I will not get any problem because it has been included in my header file. Right? So let me come and copy this function prototype as well. I'm sure by now you guys know what these function prototypes are, right? So our function are going to be created. Since we are asked to create a function, our function are going to be created based on this. The function name should be this, right? Reset to 98, and then the data, it should not return anything. As you can see here, is void, and then it should take only one parameter of what? Type pointer to an integer. So that's just this, what this is saying. So let's save here and exit. So now it's time to write the function for putka. I've included putka in my header file, but I've not added the function, right? So let me just copy this. I'm just doing this so that in the future, if I'm to use putka, I don't have to do all these things again. So I will simply create a file for putka. I will just say putka, right, .c here. So that's all. So let me paste this here. Yes, so now I'm done with putka. So now let's begin writing our function. Let me copy the file name here. So vi, this here. Okay, so what's the first thing I'm supposed to do? I'm supposed to include my header file. So I will say hash include main.h. all right, so this, right, this is a function. So I will copy this and I'll paste this here. So I will write my function based on this data I'm given. So it says the function that takes a pointer to an integer. As you can see, this is a pointer to an integer, right? Int asterisk n. This asterisk n is what? A pointer. And it's pointing to an integer. So whatever this n is pointing to should be an integer. That's just what this is saying. If this place here is car, then whatever the address that is stored in this pointer here should be referring to a character item. That's just what this is saying. So all we are asked to do is to what? To change the value of this pointer here to 98. Okay, and update the value it's pointing to 98. So this n already initially holds a value, right? So we are to change that value to 98. Let's see here. As you can see here, n has been declared as what? As 402. So all what we are to do is to create a pointer, a function that will change the value of this n to 98. So this is where we are going to use a dereferencing operator. So all what I'm going to do here is just a simple thing. I'm dereferencing n, right? I'll just say asterisk n is now equals to what? 98. That's just it. So whenever this function is called, it will change the value of the address that is pointed by this pointer here to what? To 98. So that's just what this is all about. I'm dereferencing n. When I dereference this, it's like I'm targeting the value direct. I'm targeting the value that this pointer n holds the address of, right? That's just what I'm trying to do here. So I said, okay, the value should be 98. So I'm changing the value to 98. Okay, so our function here, as you can see, is void. So it's not returning anything. So let's do Betty here now. So I will say the function name here. In this case, since we are not using a main function, you have to copy the function name. Okay, you have to just explain to Betty what the function does. Okay, so the function is just what? Changes the value, right? Changes the value of n to 98. That's what it does, right? So it doesn't return anything, right? So I will just say return 0, right? So this is it. So now let's save and exit. So let's create our test file here. Let me copy this. The file name is what? Main.c. So I will say vi 0 main.c, right? Okay, so I'll paste this here. All right, so now what next? So let me run Betty on what? On this file here. So I will just say Betty, right? Betty, what's the file name? 01 putka, right? Sorry, 0 reset.c. So let's see if Betty is happy. So no description found for parameter n. Okay, so this is it. Let me show you. So this function here contains what? A parameter, which is n. So I have to tell Betty what the parameter does. So let me do this. Okay, so I will just say at n here is the value to be replaced, right? Let me just say something like this. So let me run Betty again. Yes, so now you can see Betty is happy with this. But don't forget, let me show you this as well. When you open your main file here, Betty will definitely give you error. Okay, when you try to run Betty on this, because you can see here is a space. You have to use tab key for spacing. If else, Betty will be giving you error. you have to delete the spacing and then put the tab. That's when you copy it from here. In my own case, this is what normally happens. So I will have to delete the spacing one by one and then press the tab key. Okay, I don't need to be doing this all the time. I'm just trying to show you what you need to do. You have to be pressing tab key for spacing. Don't use the space bar. Okay, Betty will definitely give you an error when you do that. So now you can save and exit. So let's try compiling this program now and see. So let me copy this, paste here. All right, so you can see it worked, right? So let me run the file here. Don't forget, this is the file name now, 0 minus 98. We've already explained how this GCC works, right? So 0, 98. So let's run the file. So you can see here, it first printed the initial value, which is 402, right? And then it's now printed the new value, which is n. This is exactly what we did here. So we dereferenced the value of n, right? And then we change the value to what? To 98. N is a pointer. So to access the value that n points to, you have to use the asterisk, which is the dereference operator. So this is one good thing about pointers, like I've already explained in the previous video. I said one of the powerful features of pointers is that you can use pointer to access and manipulate the value anytime you want to. So in your own case here, don't forget to add commit and push, because I'm using Vagrant. I'm not going to do that. I'm not trying to push anything, but you can see the code works, right? The code works. So I'm sure you won't get any problem, unless if it's Betty problem, and I've showed you how to do that. Just make sure that there is no spacing, only tabs before your lines. And at the end of your line also, make sure you don't leave any space. If not, Betty will be telling you trailing white space, trailing white space. And learn to understand the Betty errors. Betty, whenever there's an error in Betty, it shows you, or it tells you the line where the error is. So you have to go to the line and fix it. Okay, so now let's move to the next task here. So this next task here says write a function that swaps the value of two integers. So the first thing I'm going to do is copy this prototype and take it to my header file, right? I have to take it to my header file. So it has to be here, right? Paste. If else, I will get undefined reference. So now I have this. Let me open the file as well. So this one swap.c. So vi, paste here. So let me include my header file, main.h. All right. So let me copy the function name here. Copy, paste. All right. So this question here says write a function that swaps the value of two integers. As you can see here, this function here takes in how many parameters? We have int a, we have int b. So it takes in two parameters. So what we are required to do here in this case is to change the values, is to swap them. A should now hold the value of b, and b should now hold the value of a. So that's swapping, right? Something like this. Something like this. Something like this. Let's say you have a is equals to 20, b is equals to 30. So now what you are required to do is to make a equals to 30 and b equals to 20. So this is swapping, right? We've swapped the value. So this is what we are required to do. So how do we do this here? So the first thing we are going to do, we have to declare an extra variable that will hold the value of this a, right? We have to declare another variable to hold the value of this a, because we don't want to lose the value, right? So I'll simply say int. Let me declare a variable c here in this case. So I will now say c should now hold the value of a. So now c holds the value of a, right? As you can, this is the referencing operator. I'm holding the value of a now. So now c holds the value of a. So I can now simply say, okay, so now a should now be equals to b. Since I already have a copy of a, had it mean I've not stored this a, the value of a in this variable c, if I say a is equals to b, then the value of a will be overwritten, and I don't have a copy of it. So that's why I'm creating a copy of this in this variable here, right? So now I will just say a will now be equals to what? A will now be equals to b. So now what happened? Now I have stored the value of b inside this a. So now I have what? The value of b inside a. So whenever I call this a now, it's going to give me the value of b. So now how can I get the value of a stored in b now? Since I already have the value of b stored in a. Now the next is to get the value of a stored in b. So don't forget, I've already declared a variable to store the value of a for me. That's why I made a copy. So I have a copy of the value of a, right? So I can just simply say this b here should now equals to c. Since c here holds the value of a, right? C holds the value of a. So that's why I said, okay, now the value of b should be the value of c, which is the value of a. So this is swapping, right? Just take note of this swapping procedure, because there is a task I think ahead where we are going to be using this this swapping. So I don't want it to be complex when you come to explanations. So just understand the swapping. When you are trying to swap, you have to create an extra variable to store a copy of one of the element, of one of the value. So when you create a copy of that, then that's all. So you can simply say, okay, now this variable is now equals to the other. Okay, so to make this a here equals to b, sorry, to make this b here equals to a, I will simply call the b, right, and say equals to c, because because c is already storing a value of a, the value of a. So that's just what you are required to. So this is swapping, right? So let's do our Betty documentation here. Let me copy the file name, right? Sorry, the function name. So Betty, paste here. Right, so what's the function name? Let me just say swap two values. Let me just say swap two values, right? So I have to explain the parameters a, right? Let me just say value 1. Explain the parameter b as well. Let me just say value 2, right? Then what again? Then our function is void, so we are not required to return anything. So I will just say return 0. So don't forget, the return here you are using should be capital R. If you use small r, Betty will show you that you have not explained what the return value does. Okay, so let me close this. All right, so now let's save and exit, and let's run Betty on the file here. All right, so now let's copy the test file here. This is it. Don't forget, like I said, if you copy this file here, make sure you use tab to indent it. Okay, use tab, else Betty will give you an error. I don't want to always be doing these small things. Okay, just remove the space and put tabs. That's just it. So save and exit. So now let's compile the program and see how it will work. Sorry. Yes, so you can see it has been compiled. So the file name is this. The final executable file name is what? Is one.swap. So I will do like this, one swap. So let's see. Yes, so you can see we've gotten something exactly like this. So the initial value is 98, right? Of a, the initial value of a is 98, and the initial value of b is 42. So now after the function has been called here, as you can see here, it's just printed what the values here. So in this place here, you can see the function has been called, right? The function was called here. So since the function is called, then we are swapping these values here. So that's why here is now 42, and then here is now 98. A and B have been swapped, right? So add, commit, and push to GitHub, and then run your checker. It will work. I'm sure about it. As you can see, I've been checked here. So now let's move to the next task here. So this task here says write a function that returns the length of a string. Okay, the function should what? Return the length of a string. So from here you can see what this is, an int, right? So definitely this function is going to return something, and it's taking a what? A parameter which is of type char, a pointer to what? To a character, right? Since we are dealing with string, that's why you are seeing this char here. Okay, we are dealing with strings. So let me first copy this thing here and take it to my header file. So I'll just say main.h. So let me paste this here. So let's save and exit here. Save and exit. So let me open the file as well to check the string length. So all this program should do is to what? Is to count the number of strings, the number of characters in a string. Okay, it's just the length of the string. I'm going to show you. Let me say hash include, let me include my header file, right? Main.h. Okay, so let me copy the function. Oops, sorry. Where is it? This is it, right? So let me copy this. I'm writing my function based on this. So paste this here. All right. So now, let me show you what they are trying to ask from us here. Let me delete this. So what you are asked to do here is to write a function that counts the number of string. I explained to you, let's say I have something like this. Let me just say state. Or this is big. Let me just reduce the size. So let's say I have STATE like this, then the null, right? So this is how it's going to be stored, right? As an array. This 0 1, the index, right? 3 4 5 here. So all we are asked to do is write a function that will count the number of characters in this, excluding this. Okay, this is not considered as part of the characters. So I expected to write a function that will count 1 2 3 4 5, and it will what? It will print 5 for you. So you can see we counted what? The number of strings, right? We counted the number of strings, the number of characters, sorry, we've counted the number of characters. So that's what you are asked to do. So take note of this null terminator here. I'm going to explain to you what it does. So let's go back and begin to write our function here. So to write this type of function, you have to what? You have to know how this function works. Okay, this function is used to what? To determine the number of strings. So but in this case, we are writing our own function. This is a standard library function. Whenever you call it and pass the string you want to count, it will definitely count it for you. But in this case, we are asked to write our own function that will perform the same thing as this. So how do we do this? So the first thing I'm going to do here is what? I will have to use a loop, right? I'll have to look from S to, I'll have to look from from S to T to A to T to E again. So this is looping, right? So I will have to loop. So I will say int I here for my looping. I will say for. So where will I start this looping from? As you can see, the index is from 0, right? And index 0 holds what? The first value. So I will say okay. So now my what? My iteration should begin from 0, right? I want to begin from 0. So what should be the condition that will execute this loop? So I will say if I here, as you can see, I will what? Will move from 0, we move to 1, we move from 2, we move to 3, we move to 4, we move to 5, right? And let's say this variable here is S1. So to access this value here, I will say S1 5, right? This will give me, sorry, S1 4. This will give me this value here, E, right? Just take note of how to access this thing. So here, what should be the condition? The variable name, as you can see here, that holds the string is S. So I will just say S, what? Si here in this case. Why did I use I? I will keep the count, right? If in this case here, you can see I is now 0. So S0 here is what? The value of I here in this case will be 0. So this will be what? This will be S0. So what is S0 in this case? S0 is S. So S0 is equals to S. If I increment to S1, then S1 is what? S1 is 2, is T, sorry. Okay, hope you are understanding this thing. So I will say Si here is not equals to what? The null byte terminator here. This is the condition. Let me show you here. So all what I'm saying in that condition, let me print it here. All what I'm saying in that condition here is that keep iterating, okay? Keep going from this to this to this to this. But when you encounter this null byte terminator, like I said, this null byte terminator shows the end of the string, right? Whenever you encounter this, then exit the loop, right? That's what I just said. Every string every string that is stored in arrays ends with what? With this null byte terminator. That's how we use to know that we've reached the end of the string. So I'm just saying that S1 initially is what? 0, which is what? Which is S. It moves to what? S1, which is what? Which is T here. Up till it comes to what? S, the index what? Is index 4, which is what? Which is E here, right? After reaching this E here, then it checks S5. I will increment to 5. So it will check S5 here. So what is S5? S5 is equals to what? Is equals to the null byte terminator. So when it reaches this here, then it will exit the loop. It will not run what is in the loop. So that's just what I said here. So I said if this, right? If S1I, Si, sorry, in this case our variable is S. If the value of S index I is not equals to this, then print what I'm going to put inside this loop. If it is equals to the null byte terminator, then it means that's the end of the string, then exit the loop. So now I will increment, right? I will have to increment this. Okay, hope you understood what I did. This I here, I'm just trying to target the index of this string S, right? So if the I here is 0, so it will first check index 0, and index 0 is the first character, right? Is the value inside index 0 equals to this? No, it is not equals to this, so it will execute what is in the loop. It will increment to 1, right? I will now be equals to 1, so this will be what? S1 here. Is the value in index 1 of S equals to this? No, then it will execute the loop. So that's how it will keep incrementing until it reaches the last index. In our own case, this is it, index what? Index 5, that holds the null byte terminator, as you can see. If it reaches the last index, it will check the value of the last index. Is it equals to this? Yes, it is equals to this. Okay, since it is equals to this, then I'm not going to enter into the loop, because this is the condition. I'm told that if it is not equals to that, then I will execute the loop. That's just what this is saying. So now we've seen how to iterate from the beginning to the end of the string. So how do we count the number of strings there, right? How do we count the number of strings? So what I'm going to do here, I will declare another variable here. Let me just say count. I will initialize it to 0. Let me show you what this is going to do. Sorry, I have to say int count. So what is this going to do? So what this count is going to do is it will store the the number of iterations, right? Initially the value is 0. Okay, initially the value is 0. So I can simply say count here plus plus. So what do you think this is? So what I'm trying to say is that initially the value of count is 0. So whenever any iteration occurs, then I want you to increment the value of count from 0 to 1. We all know that the first iteration, if it is 0 and it checks that this is not true, it will execute the loop. So that means what? That means that we've count the first digit, right? So it will increment count to what? To 1 now. Now count holds the value 1. So then it will increment again and check for index 1 here. So it will check is index 1 equals to this? No. Then it will come into the loop and increment the value of count from 1 to what? To 2. Right? Let me show you. Whenever it iterates from to the first character here, it will go into the loop and increment the value of count. Right? If the value I increment as well, then it will go into the loop as well, provided that the condition is true, and increment the value of count again to 2. Right? It will check for the other iteration, it will increment the value. So for every iteration, it will increment the value of count. For every iteration, it will increment the value of count. So that's how we'll be able to know the length of the string, how many strings we have. For each iteration, increase the value of count. For each iteration, increase the value of count. So that way we know how many characters are in a string. Hope this is clear enough, right? So we are told that what? It should return the length of the string here. So I will just simply come here and say return. Return what? I will say return. Since count is the variable that holds the length of the string, I'll just say count here. That's all. Okay, so this will return the value, the final count of this that this variable count holds. I hope I'm communicating. So let's save this and exit. So have we created our main file? Okay, let's copy this to main.c, right? Copy vi to main.c. So let's paste this here. All right, so now let's run Betty on the file to strlen.c. Okay, no description found for function strlno. No description found. Have I even done the Betty documentation? Oops, I've not even documented Betty and I'm running Betty. So let me document. Okay, so copy the function. So here, I'm beginning, sorry, yes. So the function name is this, paste here. So let me just say returns what? The string length, right? Then what again? Then the variable here s, the parameter, we have to also tell Betty what the parameter does. So I will just say string whose length, right, to be printed. Okay, then what again? Then return, right? Return, in this case we are returning the value, so I will just say length of the string, right? Our return value here is the length of the string. So I'm done with Betty here. So let's save and exit. Let's run Betty on it again. So Betty is fine. So let's compile the file now and see if it will work. So paste here. Yes, so you can see the compilation is complete. Let's run the file here. So you can see we got what? We got 16. Same as this here, right? Same as this here. So let's count this manually and see. Even spaces are considered as characters. Take note of this. Okay, so the first one we have 1, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then this space 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, then 16. Okay, so these are what? The number of string that we have here. This is the number of string we have, 16. So this is simply how you can get the number or the length of a string. You simply iterate, you simply increment for each iteration. You have to use a for loop, and whenever that for loop runs, then increment the value. That means what? It has counted the first string. Then when the loop runs again, then increment the value again. That's how you keep incrementing until it reaches the last string. When it reaches the last string, then the loop will exit. So when the loop exits, then that variable that stores the number of iterations holds the length of what? Of your string that you've been iterating through. Okay, that's just this. So now let's move to the next task. Don't forget to add, commit, and push. Okay, so let's move to the next task. So what is this function saying? This function is just asking us to write a function that prints the strings. Anything that is passed to it should be printed. So just like in this case, it says, I do not fear computers, I fear the lack of them, right? This, right? As you can see, it's got printed exactly here. So that's just what we're asked to do. We should write a function that's what? Print string. So whatever is passed to the function, it should be printed. And it says here what? The standard library provides similar function, puts here, right? It's provide what? Similar function. So in this case here, I'm going to use the function putchar. Don't forget we've already created a function putchar. This is it, right? Like I said, just in case we are going to need this function in the future, I created the function, right? I copied it from the repository. You all know how we did this, right? So we are going to use putchar for this. But first, let me paste this in my main.h file, the function prototype, right? So let me paste. Oops, I have to copy again. Copy, then paste here. Okay, so now let's save this and exit. Then what? Then the file name, which is this, vi, paste here. So let me include my header file, main.h. Okay, so the function name here is what? Sorry, the function details here. All right, here. So we are to print create a function that prints whatever is passed to it. As you can see, this is the function parameter, right? So we have to create our function based on what? Based on this. So how do you think we are going to do this? So to do this here, we have to what? We have to iterate over this set of strings here. We have to iterate over them to be printing them what? One by one. If you know what this if you know what this function does, where is the function? If you know what this put does, this put is used to print characters. Okay, so we are told that the standard library provides similar function, this standard library. So we are going to use something like this. We are going to create something like this. So we are going to iterate from the first to the end of the string that we are to pass in our function, right? So we are going to use a loop. So this is one of the things that I keep on saying, you have to learn how to use all these loops. They are very, very important. So I'll have to declare my I that I'm going to use for the looping. So I will say for. I like using for loop actually. So it should the first iteration should begin from where? From 0. Sorry. Oops. From 0. Why am I using 0? Because these strings are stored in what? In the memory in array format, and array begins with what? Index 0. So I'm beginning my iteration from the first array, from the first index, sorry. So here will be what? This is the variable name that holds the array. This pointer here, right? It holds what? This array here. So how can I target the values of this array, the index of this array? So I will say str, which is the array name, right? And then the index number, which is I in this case. So if I is 0, this here will what? Will target index 0. If I is 1, this here will target index 1. If I is 2, this will target index 2. If I is 3, that's how it will keep checking. It will keep checking until where? Until it reaches this place where the index is what? Is holding the value of the null byte. So when this is encountered, then the end of the string has been reached, right? So I will increase the value of I. I just hope you guys understood the condition here. As far as you understood the indexing, something I've been showing you here, as far as you understood the indexing, then you'll be able to understand all what I'm doing here. Okay, how to index or how to target a particular item in a string using their index number. Okay, so just know this. So after this here, then what again? So I will simply say putchar. I'm using putchar, right? I will say putchar, then str. What am I trying to print? The value of stri. What this is going to do is this. It will say after the first iteration, which I is equals to 0, right? It will check the array that this string is being stored. The index 0 holds what? This value I. So it will check the value that is held in index 0. Is it equals to this? No, it's not equal. So if it is not equal, then it will execute this loop. It will jump into the loop. And it will what? It will print stri. In this case is what? str0, which means I'm targeting the index 0 of this variable str, which is index what? Which is what? Which is I. This is index 0 here, right? So after this here, it will increment the value of I. Okay, I will now be equals to what? 1. So it will check here. Now I here will be what? Will be 1. str1, right? str index 1, is it equals to null byte terminator? It will check what is the second index. The second index, as you can see, is a space here. So it is not equals to this. So this will jump into the loop, and then str1 will be printed, which is the space. So it will increment again to str what? To str to it will increment I to what? To 2, right? So str2 here will be str2. So str2 is what? str2, as you can see here, is d, right? Is d equals to, is the value in str2 equals to this? No, it is not. Then it will jump into the loop, and then it will print str2 for us, which is what? Which is d. So that's how the loop keeps on going until it reaches the end, right? Until it reaches the end. When it reaches the end, right, it will check, is the value inside this equals to this? Yes, it is inside. It is equals to, so this portion here will not be printed. So that's just what this does. So now we have to print our what? Our new line outside the loop. Okay, so putchar, so /n. So this is a new line. Okay, so as you can see here, our function is what is void, so it's not returning anything, right? The function should not return anything. So let's do our Betty documentation here. In the future, I'll not be doing this Betty documentation. I'm just doing it for you now to get familiar with it, okay? Because it's taking time and making the video longer. Just know how to use the Betty, okay? So now what's the function name? Sorry, what's the description of the function? It's print what? It's print strings. Sorry, print strings here. Then what next again? What are we going to? Then the function parameter, right? At str. Sorry, I'll have to explain this to Betty as well. At str. Let me just say function parameter. Then what again? Then the return. Our function is void, it doesn't return anything, so this should be return 0. So let's exit, right? So now let's copy our test file here. So the file name should be 3main.c, right? So paste this here. All right, save and exit as well. So now let me run Betty on the first file, which is 3 puts, right? Yeah, so Betty is happy. So now let's compile the file now and see if it will work. So paste here. All right, so you can see it has been compiled. So let's run the compiled file to ensure everything works fine. Yes, so you can see we got the text here printed, same as this here, right? We got everything just like this printed here. So this is how you get to print these things using the loops. So add, commit, and push to a GitHub and then run your checker. So let's move to the next task here. So this task here says write a function that print a string in reverse followed by a new line. Let me copy this first. Sorry, the function prototype, and paste it in my header file. Okay. So this should be pasted here. All right. Okay. So let's save and exit. Let me open the file, this, right? So vi, paste here. Then let me include my header file, hash include main, sorry, main.h. So the function, oh, sorry, the function, which task is that? In reverse. This is it, right? Yes. So this function information, copy this, then paste this here as well. So what this function should do is to print in reverse. Let me show you something. Let me delete this here. So this is saying if you have something like happy, right? You are expected to print something like YPPAY, So this is just what this task is asking me to do. Okay, so don't forget this. This happy here is stored in this format, like this, and then the null byte terminator here, right? This is how they are stored. So we have to use iteration, right? We have to iterate over each of them to print them in reverse. So we are interested in printing this first, right? This Y should be printed first, then this should be printed, then this should be printed, then this should be printed, then this should be printed. So what do you think will happen? In this case, we are to begin our iteration from the last string here, which is Y. That's what will enable us to print them in reverse. Initially, we are doing our iteration from where? From the beginning, HAPPY. But in this case, since we are told to print them in reverse, so definitely our iteration will begin from the last digit here, from the last character. So what should be the condition here? So for us to know the last character here, we have to know the number of string. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? The length of the string is 5. So I will say my iteration should begin from where? From 5. So it will what? It will begin printing Y, and then the condition should be what? I minus minus. Then it will decrement and go to this, decrement to this, decrement to decrement. That's how it will iterate from the last to the first. Okay, so what I'm trying to show you here is that before we begin this iteration, we have to know the value we have to know the length of the string, because we are beginning our iteration from where? From the length of that string. If the length of the string is 20, we have to begin our iteration from 20, because we want to start printing our last character. So this is just what I'm trying to say here. So in this case here, we have to find the length of the string. We've already seen how to find length of the string in one of the tasks in which we use count, right? So let's do the same thing here. In this case, I will declare I for my looping, and I will say int count here, and I will initialize the value of count to be 0. So the initial value of count should be 0. So here is what we did. We said, okay, for I equals to 0, this is for what? For the counting, okay, to determine the length. So what's the variable name? The variable name is s, right? So si is not equals to what? It's not equals to the null byte, then I plus plus. So here I simply said count plus plus. So this will what? This will get the number of strings in this variable here s. So now our count variable here holds the number of string. It holds the length of the string. So what am I going to do next? I'm going to create a loop to iterate over this set of strings now, since I already have the length, right? The main purpose of getting the length is to begin my iteration. Okay, so the last element here is 5. So my iteration will begin from I equals to 5. If this here I have, let's say O here, then I have the null byte terminator. We have how many elements? We have 6, right? The length is 6. So my iteration will begin from 6 here. Then it will reverse like this. Hope you understood this concept. So I will just come here and said, okay, now let me iterate over these characters. So my iteration should begin from where? My iteration should begin from the length of the string. Just like what I did here. The length of the string here is 5. Then my iteration begins from where? From 5. So in this case here, this count variable holds our value of what? Of the length of the string. So I simply say equals to count. So this is going to begin the iteration from the length of the string. If the length is 20, it's going to begin from 20. If the length is 30, it's going to begin the iteration from 30. Since we are printing in reverse, 30, 29, 28, 27, like this, it will print them downwards. Okay, so what should be the condition here? So the condition here is what? I will say I, right, has to be greater than what? Or equals to 0. So the value of I should be greater than 0 or equals to 0. Let me show you why. This is index 0, right? So whenever the value of I, when it iterates from what? From the last digit downwards, until it reaches value of I is 0 or greater than 0, then it should stop. Okay, so if the value of I is less than 0, it will exit the loop. So this is what will help us to target even the first element here, right, which is index 0. So here I will just say I is greater than or equals to 0. That's index. Okay, the index should be greater than or equals to 0. So what next again? So I will say what? I minus minus. Since I'm printing in reverse, I'm printing from the largest, right? Just like what I showed you here, I'm printing from the largest. So it has to be, I has to be decremented every time. Every time the loop runs, I will decrement. So this will enable us move to the previous character. Then after run this again, it will move, it will decrement I again, and then it will go back to the previous character. That's how it will keep looping until it reaches I equals to 0. Okay, so when it equals to 0, then it will enter this loop. So in this loop here, it will now print the value. Putka, what should Putka print? It should print S index I. So for every iteration, it's going to print the value of I. For every iteration, it's going to print the value of I. Hope this is clear. So the next thing is what? Our new line. They said followed by a new line. So after the loop runs, at the end, just print a new line. So I will say Putka /n. Okay, so as you can see, our function here is void, so no need of returning anything. It should not return anything. So I will go up here for Betty documentation. All right, so this, then the function, what does the function does? Print string, right, in reverse. So what again? The function parameter at s what does the function parameter does? Let me just say function parameter. Okay, let me just say function parameter. So we don't return anything, right? So return, I will just say 0 here. So that's all. So let me run Betty first on the file for this. Yeah, so Betty is fine. So let's copy our test file here, which is for main.c, right? So copy this. So vi for main.c. So paste this here. So let's save and exit. So now let's compile the program and see if we will get the desired output. So copy, paste this here. All right. So now let's run the file. All right. So now you can see we got the string printed in reverse. This was the initial string. I do not fear computers, I fear the lack of them, by Isaac Asimov. Right? So as you can see now, it has been printed in reverse. So you see it's got the last character printed first, then the second to the last, then the third to the last. So this is how you iterate backwards. Okay, whenever you're trying to iterate backwards, you have to decrement. You have to start your iteration from the last character and then decrement until the first character. As you can see, this is exactly what is here, right? So now you add, commit and push and then run your checks. So now let me clear my screen for the next task here. So this task here says write a function that reverses a string. This is similar to the task we did here. In this case, we are told write a function that print a string in reverse. It prints the string after reversing it. But in this case, we are told that write a function that reverses a string. So I think the solution should be similar with that of the above. I'm going to leave this for you. Okay, try and jot it down, whiteboard it, write everything you think the possible difference. Okay, you've already seen how I did the above code. Try to figure out the difference between these two. If there is any problem, then we'll discuss this later on. Okay, but I'm going to leave this for you. I just want to see how you can be able to relate this with the above task here. If there is any issue, like I said, we are going to talk about it. Okay, so here says write a function that prints every other character of a string, starting with the first character followed by a new line. Every other character. Let me show you this. We are asked to print every other character. Let me see the question again. It's a string, right? Okay, it's a string, every other character. So let's say you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you are told to print any other character starting from the first digit, it means print this one, then skip this, then print this one, skip this, print this one, then skip this. Let's say there's 6 here, then print this. Okay, that's also what they mean, every other character. So print the first one, skip the second one, print the third one, skip the fourth one, print the fifth one, skip the sixth one. That's also what this is trying to ask from you. Sorry. So how do we do this here? So how do we do this here now? So firstly, let me copy my function prototype. Let me take it to my header file. I think next time I will just copy all these header files, all these prototypes in the header files before I begin the session. I think it will be better and faster. So now let's open this file here, the file we are going to work on. So it should be vi, right? 6, sorry, I've copied it and I'm trying to type it, paste here. All right, so let me include my header file, hash include, sorry, hash include, why am I skipping this H? I'm not pressing the shift key, I think that's why it's displaying something like this. So main.h. So now the function here, this is the function, right? So copy and then paste here. All right, so let's see how this is going to work. Print other characters of your string. Let's see the example here. As you can see here, this is the string here, right? It's been declared 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, right? Let me show you how this is going to be stored. First, let me delete this. We have from where? From 0 to 9, right? We have from 0 to 9. So I will say this is how it's going to be stored here. Let's say I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then the null byte here, right? So this is how it's going to be stored, like this. Like this, like this, like this, like this. Right? So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? These are the difference in the different index as well. Okay. So we are asked to print them in order. Okay? In every order. Okay, we are asked to print them that way. So it means we will have to iterate the first one. We are told to print even the first one. Let me show you. We are told to write a function that print every other character of a string starting with the first character. It should start with the first character. It should start with the first character. So definitely we are going to print this. This should be printed. Then we will what? We will skip one here. And then this should be printed. We will skip this. And then this should be printed. We should skip this. And then this will be printed. Skip this. Print this. And then skip this. So what I'm trying to show you here is that we are going to create a loop. Right? We are going to iterate from the first character here. Because we are asked to print even the first character. Right? So when we create our loop, you know we normally increment. So in this case, we have to do 2 incrementation. So if our first loop holds this value of 0, so when it's normal, you know, in the when setting the condition, when creating the loop, we have to create an increment. So it will increment to this, and we don't want to print this. So for this, instead, since we don't want to print this, we have to do another increment within our loop so that it will take us to this. Let me show you what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to give you the idea here. So the function here says, so what am we going to do here? So in this case here, I will have to what? I will have to so in this case, I will declare my I, which I'm going to use for my for my iteration. I will say for I should begin from where? From 0 here, right? The value of I should be 0. So I will say the variable name is str, right? So stri, we all know, we are all familiar with this condition now, right? It should be less than, it should not be equal to the null byte. Okay, so if it reaches the null byte, then don't execute the loop. The null byte determines the end of the string, right? Then I will say I plus plus. So here what will happen? So I will say put char what? Put char str I. This will print the value of this will print the value of str for each iteration. So the first iteration is 0, right? So it's going to print the first index, which is in this case what? Let me open this, which is in this case 0. So when it prints this, you can see this condition here, I plus plus. So it's going to increment the value of I to what? To 1. So when it increments it to 1, then the loop will print this here now. And we are not interested in printing this. So since I don't want to print this, I can simply come here. Oops. Sorry, I have to, since I'm creating more than one line in the loop, I'll have to use a bracket here. Alright, so I can simply come here and say what? I plus plus. So what do you think this will happen? I'm trying to increment twice. I'm incrementing 2 times. So when the first loop runs, increment the first time. When you increment the first time, it's going to take you to this second element here. But I'm not interested in printing this. So I will say, then I said here, this increment here should increment the second time. So when it reaches this here, it will going to increment again and it will take you to the third element here. Okay? Hope you understood what I'm trying to do here. So it will increment it again. So now I will now hold the value of what? Of 2, sorry. The first iteration is for 0. It will print what? str index 0. When it print str index 0, then this will be, it will then execute this line, which is I plus plus. I is what? Is 0. It will now increment what? To 1. When it increments to 1, it will now come back and check for this condition again. So this is what? This is 2. So sorry, this is another increment. So it will increment to what? To 2. So now the value of I is 2. So str will now print what? Will now check for str2 here. So which is what? Let me open this. So and this is what? This is str2. This is it. So as you can see, we have skipped this. So str2 will be printed, which is 2 in this case. right? So if it's print str2 here, it will then increment the value of I again to 3, right? After incrementing the value of I to 3, it will come back here and also increment the value of I to 4. So you can see we've skipped another item. So the value of I now will now hold 4. So this is str4 and str index 4 will be printed. In this case, this is str index 4. It will be printed. So now it will increase the value of I to to 5 by running this increment here. It will increase it to 5 by running this last increment. So when it increases it to 5, I'm not interested in printing the 5th index, right? So it will check for the condition again here, right? And it will check for this increment again, and it will increment the value to 6 now. When it increment the value to 6, it will now check for the condition, and then str6 will be printed, which is this in this case. So this is how you can get to iterate by skipping one index or the other, right? So I didn't mean I want to skip 2 index, right? I want to skip 2. Let's say I want to, after printing this, I don't want to print this. I want to print 3, then I want to skip this. So I can just add another I plus plus here. So it will increment thrice before before running this. That's just what this is saying. Hope you understood this here. So now the next thing is I think Betty will give me an error here. There's a space. Or let me leave the space here. As you can see, there's a space here. So let me leave the space. Let's see if Betty will be happy with that. So I will just say here, for a new line, I will say put car here for a new line. So this should be /n here, right? So our function is void. It does not return anything, right? So let me do my Betty documentation. So the function name is puts2, right? So what does it do? What does this do? Let me just say print strings. Then what again? The function parameter at str. What does it do? Let me just say function parameter. Sorry. So the return, we are not returning anything, so it's 0. Sorry, I'm not supposed to put this. All right, so now let's run Betty on this file now and see the error. Betty, yes, so you can see it says trailing white space. We have a space at the end. When it says trailing, it means at the end. Okay, you have a white space in line 13 and also line 16. Trailing white space in line 13 and line 16 of this file 6put.c. So let me open the file. Line 13 and 16, right? So let me say set number. All right, so line 13, this is line 13, right? So let me see the space. Yes, you can see there's a space. Can you see where my cursor is blinking? So I'm supposed to press backspace to delete the space. So now you can see there is no space. So in line 16 again, as you can see in line 16 also there's a space. Can you see? Before the after the closing curly brace and where my cursor is currently blinking, there's a space. So you have to press the backspace to remove that space. So now Betty should be fine. So let's run Betty again. So now let's create our test file, which is 6main.c, right? So I'll say vi 6main.c. So paste this here. So let's save and exit. So now let's compile. All right, so it has been compiled. Let's run the compile file. Yes, so you can see we got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, right? We got them in every order. We have 1 to 9, but we got 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, just like this. Sorry, we got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so you can see we skipped every digit, right? So you can see we skipped some of the digit, right? We iterate over some of the digit and then skipped them. So this is just how you can do this. I hope I'm explanative enough, right? So let's create this and let's move to the next task here. Don't forget to add, commit and push, then run your check. Okay, so this function here, this question here writes a function that prints half of a string followed by a new line. So this task here says write a function that prints half of a string followed by a new line. So this is what this is saying. Let me delete this. So if you have something like this, I keep using this happy. Sorry, let me delete again. So I keep saying I'm happy. If you have something like this, right, with the byte terminator here, no byte. All right, so if you have something like this, you are expected to print only half of the strings. In this case, we have how many strings? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5, right? So you are expected to print what? Or before I consider that, let's say I have O here, right? I have O, right? So this is the null byte terminator. So you can see you have how many strings? We have 6 strings. So all what you are required to do is just print only half, 1 to 3, right? So just print only HAP. You are not asked to print PYO. So this should not be printed. Only HAP, because HAP is the half of the string. So in this case here, as you can see, it is only when you have an even number of strings. So before that, it means we have to know the length of the string, right? So we have to know the length of our string. When we know the length of our string, that is when we'll be able to what? To know half of the length. So let's say in this case, we have 6 as the length of the string. So we have to say 6 divided by 2, right? Which is what? Which is 3. So that's how we'll be able to know how many digits, how many items we'll be printing. 6 items here, right? So let's say now we have this thing. We have an odd number of what? Of items. Let's say I have HAPPY here. Then the null byte here. So as you can see here, what is the length of the string? The length is what? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5. And 5 is odd. So they have given us a condition for that here. They said what? If the number of characters is odd, the function should print last n characters of the string, where n is equals to length of the string minus 1 divided by 2. We've already been given this. So let me show you what this is. Take note of this. N is what? N is length of the string, right? Minus 1, then divide by 2. So this is what they mean here. If we have the length of the string here, we have is what? Is 5. So our n that we are asked to print should be what? Equals to, what is the length of the string? It is 5. It should be what? 5 minus 1, right? So which is what? 4, then divide by 2. So this will give us what? This will give us 2, right? So they said 5 length of the string minus 1 divided by 2. Our length of the string, I'm considering this, okay? The length of the string is 5. So 5 minus 1 is 4. So 4 divided by 2 is what? Is 2. So in this case, we are only going to print what? H and A, right? We are only going to print HA. 1, 2. Okay, so this is just what this is saying. Okay, that is if the number is odd. So if the number is odd, only subtract 1 from the total length of the number, then divide by 2. So you are expected to print that. Okay, if it is even now, just like I explained, if we have O at the end here, I will just say the number of items is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6. I'll just say 6 divided by 2. Sorry, this is even, right? 6 divided by 6 is even. 6 divided by 2 is what? Is 3. So I will print what? 1, 2, 3. So I'll print HAP. Hope you understand. So that's just what we are asked to do here. So before we do that, you definitely know that we have to know the length of the string, right? Before I was able to do this, I had to what? Know the length of the string. So we have to, in our function, we have to find the length of the string first, right? So let's just open the file. Let me open my header file and paste this prototype here. So I say vi main.h here. So this should be, sorry. All right, paste. Okay, so now let's save and exit this. So let me just create this my test file now, so that if I finish writing the function, I'll just compile directly. So vi, the file name is 7main.c. Okay, so paste this here as well. This for testing, right? The testing main file. So now let's open the file here and begin to write our function, and let's see how the function is going to look like. So vi paste. Oops, whoa, sorry. which am I working on? Which of the tasks am I even working on? Is it task 7, right? Yes. Yes, so I will include what my standard library, sorry, my header file here, hash include main.h. Okay, so now this is the function info, right? Let me copy it, then paste here. All right, so what are we going to do first? Like I said, we have to determine the length of this string, right? Before we do anything, we have to know the length of the string. So we have to write the function to calculate the length of the string. We've seen how to do that, I think, even twice. So I will have to use a for loop, right? I will have to, let me use count here. I will have to initialize count. You know that the variable count holds our number of strings here. So I will just say for, right, for I equals to 0, I want to begin my iteration from the first index, right? So what's the variable name here? str I. This str is what? Is from this function parameter. Okay, take note of that. So stri is what? Not equals to the null byte terminator. By now you have been familiar, you must have been familiar with this condition. Then I plus plus, right? So I'm trying to get what? The number of strings. So I will say count plus plus. So this is what we did. Sorry, there's supposed to be a semicolon. So this is what we do, right? To normally find the length of the string. So here it says the function should print the second half of the string. Okay, so in this case here, we are not going to print HAP here. We are only going to print PYO here. This is the second half. Let me delete this and do this again. Let me show you. We have, let's say, software here, right? Software. So this is how they are stored, right? Software, right? Then the null byte terminator, right? So how many, what's the length of this string? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. We have 8, right? So it will be what? Length of the string, right, divided by 2. That will give us what? Half of the string. So which is what? 8 divided by 2, which is what? Which is 4. So we are only going to print 4 characters. So in this case, we are told to print only the second half. So this is the first half, right? This is the first half, SOFT. 1 2 3 4. This is the first half, right? The second half is this 5 6 7 8. So we are only interested in printing this half now. That's just what this says. So how can we do this here? So what we are going to do here, we have to set a condition here. I will say if length, sorry, in this case, if count, right? Count holds my length of the string, right? So I will say if count modulo 2 is equals to 0. So what does this condition mean? It means if the string is what? Is even, right? Hope you know what this modulo 2 means, right? It means divide this variable here, the value here, by 2. If the remainder is equals to 0, then that means that is an even number. Anything you divide by 2, if the remainder is 0, is 1, is even, right? So that's why I use this modulo here. Learn the difference between this modulo operator and then the division operator. Okay, this returns what? This what helps you to know the remainder. Okay, it knows the remainder. So that's why I said, okay, if the length of the string divide by 2, or let me just say length here. Let me use length so that you'll be able to understand this. Let me just say LENGTH. So I'm trying to show you that TH, length of the string. So here I will say LEN, so the length of the string, right? So here I will say length again. Okay, so I'm saying if you divide the length of the string by 2, if it is equals to 0, so that means it is what? It is even. So if it is even, this is what I want to happen. I will create a for loop now to iterate over the entire string. Don't forget, we are only printing half of the string, and it is the second half of the string. How do we get half of the string? We divide the length by 2. That gives us half of the string. So where do I need to begin my iteration here? I will say for I want to begin my iteration from LENGTH divide by 2. So I want to begin my iteration from length divided by 2. Let me show you here. So here our length is 8. When we divide 8 by 2 is what? Is 4, right? This is what? Index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, index 5, index 6, index 7, right? So I want to begin my iteration from here. When you divide the length of the string, which is 8 by 2, we got what? We got 4. So I want to begin my iteration from the 4th index here. The 4th index here is the beginning of the second half. Let me do this again. You have to understand this thing. You have to understand this thing. I wrote something like this. O, F, T, W, A. Let me just stop here. I want to make it very big for you so that you'll be able to see this clearly. I did something like this. I wrote software. We have how many digits here? Sorry, characters. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or let me try and make it, let me put another S here. I want to make it odd. So you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? We have 7. The length of our string is what? Our length here is what? Is equals to 7. So we are interested in printing half of this. So how do we get to know the half of the string that is passed to the function? We simply have to what? Find the length of the string. When we find the length of the string, we divide it by 2. So length here, right, divide by 2 is what will give us half of the string. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 here, divide by 2 is what? When we divide 7 by 2, we get what? We get 3.5, right? So, but in this case, 5 is not supposed to be there because of this operator here. So it's 3. So what will happen here? What will happen here? We've been given a condition that said if it is odd, then we have to what? Minus 1 from our length. So in this case, instead of saying 7 over 2, I will say 7 minus 1 all over 2. So which is what? 7 minus 1 is 6, right? 6 over 2 will give us what? Will give us 3 here. It's the same thing, right? We will get 3 here as well. So this means that we are only going to print 3 characters of this particular set of string. And these characters here, we are only going to print the last 3. Hope you understand this, right? Hope you understand this thing. So this is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is 1, 2, and 3. So we are only going to print the second half, which is this. So let's see how to do this. Okay, I just hope you guys understood this. That's why I use this condition here. Okay, if my iteration should begin from what? Length divided by 2. Right? That's half of the string. So I will say here, I will say str now I, right? The condition stri is not equals to this /0 here, right? By now you must have been familiar with this condition to iterate over a string. So this. So now I've set my for loop. So I will simply say put char here, put char here should be stri. So we all know what this does, right? So it's going to begin my iteration from what? Length divided by 2. If the length is 10, that is if what? If my length is an even number, right? If the length of the string is even. If the length of the string is even, it's going to jump into this for loop here. It will say, okay, begin the iteration from length divided by 2. Length divided by 2 is half of the string. If you have 10 string, length divided by 2 is what? 5. So it's going to begin iteration from the 5th index. Okay, let me show you this again. I just want you to understand all these things. That's why I'm taking my time to explain. So the first case here, we are considering what? For even number, right? If it is even. So I like using this HAPPYO, then this, right? This. Is this even? 1 2 3 4 5 6. Yes, this is even. So I said if it is even, right, if it checks the length, if the length is even, then it should jump into this loop. So this loop here says begin your iteration from length divided by 2, right? So what is the length here? The length is what? Is 6. 6 divided by 2 is what? Is 3. So begin your iteration from index 3. So here we have 0, we have 1, we have 2, right? So begin your iteration from index 3, which is what? Which is this. So this is how I'll be able to get the second part printed. Hope you understand this thing. So begin your iteration from index 3. So that's just what this is saying. Begin your iteration from index 3. So keep iterating until you reach this last condition here. When you reach that, then exit the loop. Okay? So when you reach, for each iteration, print the value that is in that index. Print the value that is stored in that index. That's just what this is saying. In the case of this L over 2, in my own case here, if I use putka here, the first thing that will be printed is what? Is P. If it increment, it will go to 4, then Y will be printed. Increment and go to what? 5, then 0 will be printed. This is how you get the second what? Second part of what? Of the string. I hope you understand this thing. So I will now print a new line here. After the loop runs, then I will say putka a new line here. Sorry, this should print a new line, right? So this is it. So I've now considered for what? If length is what? Is even, right? If the length is even. So here, as you can see, it says if the number of characters is odd, that is if the length is odd, right? The function should print the last n characters of the string, where n is equals to length of the string. Let me show you this. If the length is odd, right? If the length is odd, let's see this. If the length is odd, okay, if the length is odd, we have HAPPY. As you can see, this is odd, right? This is odd. We have something like this. So we have 1 2 3 4 5. The length is odd here. So all what this question is saying, it says that okay, if the length is odd, we should print the last n characters, and this last n characters is simply the length, right, minus 1, then divide everything by 2. In this case, what is our length here? Our length is 5, then minus 1, then over 2, which is equals to what? 4 over 2, which is equals to 2. So we are only interested in printing what? This is 0, right? This is 1, this is 2. So we are going to print from where? From 2 to 3 to what? To 4. Hope you understand this. This is just what this is trying to say. So let's see how to do this now. So I'll just say else if my condition above, if the length, right, modulo, right, 2 is not equals to 0, which makes it what? Odd. If the length modulo 2 is not equals to 0, then I will run this for loop again. I will say for I, right, I should begin my iteration from where? From length, let me show you, from length minus 1 over 2, right? You should first check the length and then minus 1 from the length and divide by 2. That's how we know that we are beginning our iteration from the second index here. We begin our iteration from where? Length, which is 5 in this case, minus 1, minus 1 here, which is 4, then over 2, which is what? Which gives us what? Which gives us 2. So we know that we are beginning our iteration from index 2. So this is how we get to know where to begin our iteration. So here, I'm going to say what? I'm going to say length. They've given us already. Can you see? They said, okay, the iteration should begin from length of string minus 1 over 2. Okay? So I'll just say length minus 1 here, then what? Divide, then divide by 2 here. Okay, so this should be the initialization condition, right? This should be the initialization condition. So then this again. So I will now set the condition stri, right? Wow. Stri less than or equals to what? Less than or equals to this, right? Then what? Then I plus plus. Okay, so by now you must have been familiar with this. So this is the condition here for the for loop. So now I will just say put char, right? I will now print it. Put char should print what? str, then I here, right? So then what? Then a new line. Put char to print a new line. So I'll say put char, sorry, /n. So I'm sure you guys understood all these things. Okay, just think deeply about this, read the question, think deeply about it, and go through this code I'm writing. You'll be able to understand what I'm trying to say. I've already explained for this if it is even. So now in this case, I said if it is odd, we've already been given. We said here they said, well, if the number of characters is odd, the function should print the last n characters. And the last n character they said here is the length of the string minus 1 divided by 2. So I'm beginning my iteration from here up to the last character in the string. So that's why I set my condition like this. My iteration, sorry, my initialization to be this. And this, you all know why I use this. And then print for each iteration, print the value of I. Then exit the loop at the end and then print a new line. So that's just what I did here. I just hope you guys understood this. If there is any question, feel free to ask, okay? So now let's document our Betty. So I will say, what's the function name? Puts underscore half, right? So I will just say print half of string. Then what's next? The function parameter, right? At str. What does at str does? Let me just say function parameter, right? Then what again? So our function is void, it's not returning anything. So I just say return, so say 0 here, right? So let's run Betty on the file and see. 7, okay, trailing white space in line 2. So let's see line 2. Okay, it should be here. Okay, yes. So remove the space. So save and exit and run Betty again. All right, so now Betty is happy. So now I've already created this test file. Let's compile the program now and see if it will work. So paste this here. So okay, I made a mistake in typing this putchar. Let me correct the spelling. Where is it? Okay, this last part here. It should be, there should be an A here, right? Putchar. All right, so save and exit. Let's compile again. All right, so you can see it has been compiled. So let's run the compiled file. Yes, so you can see you got what? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just exactly like this. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so this is the string here, 0, 1, 2, up to 9. So the second part is what? Is 7, 8, 9. Let's see how many strings are here. Now the length of the string here is 10. So when you divide it by 2, it means you are going to print what? From the 5th, right? Up to what? Up to the 9th. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is just what the program is asking us to do. Just kind of sit down yourself, think, whiteboard this, try to develop your own method of solving this, then do these things. So now let's move to the next task. So we will be stopping this video here. So we'll continue. So I can see this video is taking long. So I will stop this video here. We'll continue in the next video. Okay. So thank you very much.